So I saw a great interview discussing Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. There was some great insight, and I want to give the boxing philosophy perspective. So let's open the door. I'm going to explore 14 ideas. So the first idea is that Anthony Joshua was on the canvas twice in the first round against an unranked puncher. And then the premise here is that if Prenga could find that chin, what does that mean against Tyson Fury's power? Here's a question. Does Tyson Fury hit harder than Prenga? Because I'm not sure if that premise is true. I think that narrative bias may be incorrect. But Tyson Fury hits hard enough, and that's what matters. Idea number 2. Why did Team Joshua accept that kind of risk on the door of a career-defining payday? I think with this one, we're suffering from hindsight bias. It's a massive risk in retrospect. At the time, it wasn't a risk. Matter of fact, the boxing media were criticizing this fight so much. So did AJ's team assess the risk properly? I think the truth of the matter is that nobody knew Prenga was going to be so audacious. If anything, people would have assumed that he could have frozen under pressure. I don't think there was evidence to suggest that he would come out all guns blazing. Idea number 3. Prenga's right hand landed at what is estimated as only 40% power, and it nearly finished him. What happens when Tyson Fury sits down on his shots and lands clean? There's a few assumptions there. Number 1, that Tyson Fury will sit down on his shots, and number 2, he'll land clean. Tyson Fury, in his comeback fights, hasn't been sitting down on his shots. He's been touching with his shots, taking the power out of his shots. Think of how Riddick Bowe used to fight. He was a hard power puncher, but there would be times when he'd get in the pocket and he would just let shorter punches go. A better example could be Joe Kozagi. He would often throw hundreds of punches, but he would take the power off the punches. In hindsight, he would do that because he had fragile hands. So that was a great adaptation on his behalf. But Tyson Fury doesn't sit on his punches and Prenga does. Also, the premise that it was 40%. I'm not sure if I agree with that premise. And even if we do agree with the premise that it was 40% or less, the power is not the issue. It was the fact that the uppercut was unseen. That was the problem. I feel like maybe in this estimation, we are underestimating Prenga's power, because Prenga was a power. Well, Prenga had power, but we didn't know if he was a power puncher at an elite level. We knew he could punch at the lower levels, but we didn't know if he could punch at the high levels. Perhaps he answered that question. Idea number 4. Since the Ruiz knockout loss, Joshua's punch resistance has visibly declined. He gets rewired. This is an interesting one. Okay, his punch resistance, AJ's punch resistance should be questioned. With regards to has his punch resistance visibly declined, in the Prenga fight, he looked very vulnerable. The Daniel Dubois fight is hard to assess because Daniel Dubois, according to some, is a power puncher and his jab is like Sonny Liston. So you get hit by Daniel Dubois, you're going to get hurt. That's not punch vulnerability, that's power punching. However, the Prenga fight did show vulnerabilities. But again, is Prenga a power puncher? Maybe he's not. So maybe there is punch resistance. But here's a question. If you have questionable punch resistance, can you still be a champion and can you still be dominant? Now, Vladimir Klitschko had a bad chin, according to many, yet he was still a dominant champion. Therefore, it's about making the defensive amendments. Holding or stepping to the side would have shut down that uppercut. And Vladimir Klitschko used the jab as a defensive weapon and an offensive weapon and used his feet very well. I think Anthony Joshua would be wise to study those tapes of Vladimir Klitschko, because he definitely had greater punch vulnerability. He had greater punch vulnerabilities than Joshua. The 5th idea is that Joshua's corner work looked disorganized mid-crisis, shouting instructions instead of executing a plan. The corner was emotional, and I would have agreed with this premise earlier. However, since looking at this and since looking at the perspective from Peter Fury, the emotion in the speech, I think, in hindsight, was necessary. Is there a language barrier? Is English the second language of AJ's team? And does that matter even if someone's first language is English, it doesn't mean that they're communicating effectively, regardless of whether English is the second language. I can understand why people would think that there might have been a barrier with regards to delivering the instructions. Remember, when your fighter gets knocked down twice, it's a tense moment. It's an emotional moment. You're dealing with a crisis that's being watched by thousands of people. It's hard to be calm, collective, and deliver those instructions in a concise manner. However, it wasn't about delivering the message. It was about being emotive to get AJ's mind back into the fight. And remember, communication is not just what comes out your mouth. Communication is body language. The body language was the crucial communication signal here. And of course, in the corner, you have to communicate in a concise way. So in hindsight, and after deliberation and after analyzing it, I'm not sure if I agree with the assertion that it was disorganized. It was necessary, but that's only post-fight. So the sixth idea is that Joshua himself admitted post-fight, I need to start faster. This could have ended in 20 seconds. Is this a fixable technical flaw or a permanent psychological scar from Ruiz? This either has nothing to do with Ruiz or doesn't have that much of a connection to Ruiz. I think that's a false narrative bias. Let's remember what happened against Ruiz in the first fight. AJ hurt Ruiz in the first fight, went for the finish, then got knocked out. If the Ruiz fight affected him, that means that A, he would be gun shy, and B, when he hurts opponents, he would not go for the finish. In the Prenga fight, he hurt Prenga and he went for the finish. So that didn't seem to be a factor at all. He wasn't shy in pulling the trigger. He made some technical mistakes. It was a technical problem in the pocket. The problem is when you misdiagnose the problem, then you misdiagnose the solution. Idea number 7, the mid-distance is where Joshua got caught repeatedly, not out of boxing range, not in the clinch. I don't agree with that. He got caught in the pocket. That's where he got caught. Anthony Joshua is absolutely deadly mid-range. Prenga threw an overhand right, missed, stepped in to the pocket, and then threw an uppercut. I believe the uppercut was thrown in the pocket as opposed to mid-range. So I don't agree with that premise. Idea number 8. Malik Scott's technical read, Joshua needs to smother, manipulate Fury's arms and push him backward, not outbox him. I agree with Malik Scott that AJ should have done this with Prenga. With regards to Tyson Fury, I can understand that AJ needs to hold a dominant position, and the manipulation of the arms is something that's really important. Let me give an example. When Lennox Lewis fought Evander Holyfield, and I've given this example on several occasions, when Lennox would go for the grab, Holyfield would put his hands on his chest, and therefore it's harder to grab him. And from that position, he would let his punches go. So when you put your hands on your chest, it's harder to grab you. And this, I believe, is the arm manipulation that Malik Scott is talking about. And it's that type of arm manipulation that will be needed. Of course, there are other techniques, but AJ will need to be good in this area. He will need to be very good in this area. He needs to dominate this area. If AJ boxes, it just becomes a different fight. And I think it becomes a harder fight for him. By the way, Malik Scott is an underrated trainer. Idea number 9. Fury's odds improved dramatically after the Prenga fight. But did they? This does not guarantee a Tyson Fury win. Tyson Fury also looked vulnerable according to many in his fight. AJ is vicious mid-range, but has shown vulnerabilities in the pocket. If this performance encourages Tyson Fury to fight aggressively instead of box, that could actually play into AJ's hands. So it may improve the odds in terms of gambling, but it doesn't necessarily improve Tyson Fury's ability to win the fight. It changes people's perception. So the boxing media's perception changes. Maybe Tyson Fury's perception changes, but the objective reality, that could be different. Idea number 10, the panel argues Fury versus Wach was a deliberate stay busy tune-up, not a true form guide. Yeah, who was the better challenge, Prenga or Wach? Wach could not close the distance, and I don't think he has the power that he had before, and I don't even think when he was in his prime years that he was a power puncher or had significant power. You could argue that any heavyweight can punch, but I think Prenga punches harder than Wach and is more explosive, definitely more audacious. And here's a question. How would Prenga have done against Tyson Fury? Would Prenga have been able to close the distance? And would he have been able to land that uppercut? I don't think he would have been able to land that uppercut against Tyson Fury. I think Tyson Fury would not have allowed him to land that punch. However, I could be incorrect. But the closing of the distance, I think Tyson Fury would have struggled with that, and it would have been a more intense battle. Because Wach, from the highlights that I saw, he kind of resigned himself to the fact that he can't close the distance. I think Prenga has quicker feet, is more audacious, and is just more of an explosive fighter. And psychologically, around one at least, he was on it. The 11th idea is the historical parallel raised. Ali slept on Frazier before their brutal trilogy fights. Underestimation nearly cost him anything, nearly cost him everything. I'm not sure if that premise is true. He definitely didn't underestimate him for the second and third fight. Did he underestimate Joe Frazier in the first fight? I think Ali had such a dominant reign when he beat Sonny Liston twice, who was a very feared champion. I think that the 3-year layoff affected his momentum and his timing, and I think maybe he underestimated how much that would impact him in the ring. So it's not a case of did he underestimate Joe Frazier? I think he underestimated the declining of his timing. However, that premise could be incorrect, and maybe he underestimated the power of that left hook. Joe Frazier had a left hook, and Joe Frazier had a style that could cause Ali some significant problems. And sometimes you just got to fight a boxer to be able to properly articulate the puzzle that they bring, or to understand that the puzzle that they bring. And by the second fight and third fights, he solved that puzzle. But there is a lesson to be learned here. If Tyson Fury underestimates AJ, that could impact his performance, and that could lead to absolute disaster. The 12th idea is the counter-argument. Evander Holyfield looked terrible against Bobby Ches, then knocked out a 17-1 favourite Mike Tyson in the next fight. Let's give some proper context to that. It was 25-1, I believe. And let's give some further context. Evander Holyfield had a great team. He had co-trainers for that fight, Don Turner and Tommy Brooks. For context, I believe Don Turner is the only man alive, I believe he's still alive, that saw the great Rocky Marciano in the gym. Imagine that. Anyway, Don Turner, Tommy Brooks, seasoned, well-respected trainers. They created an optimal boxing environment. Also, when Evander Holyfield fought Michael Moorer earlier, he had a heart condition. And that heart condition made people think that Evander Holyfield was shot. Then when Evander Holyfield had a comeback, he had a heroic performance against Ray Mercer, but then he had another health problem against Riddick Bowe. I believe it was hepatitis A, allegedly. That performance again indicated that at that time Evander Holyfield was battle-worn, which was not true. So that's the other part of the context. And then the other piece of the puzzle, which was important, was that Evander Holyfield was not scared of Mike Tyson. They had previous history. They knew each other. And a massive part of Mike Tyson's game, particularly then, was psychologically intimidating his opponents. And then there was the additional variable that Holyfield can fight really well in the pocket, had taken punches from very powerful men like George Foreman, Riddick Bowe. And additional to that, he can fight really well in the pocket, and he has great counter-punching abilities as a heavyweight. This is stylistically not a very good fight for Mike Tyson, but at the time, when you're doing the matchmaking, You see Evander Holyfield as a big brand that you could take advantage of, as someone who was great, but is not great now. Of course, we know that that was a total miscalculation. Evander Holyfield fought perhaps the perfect fight. It was an incredible performance. Now, there is one parallel here with regards to Evander Holyfield, Tyson, and AJ and Tyson Fury, and that's my belief that AJ and Tyson Fury have previous history, and the fact that AJ, I think, has always wanted to beat Tyson, or always wanted to fight Tyson Fury. I think he's always been motivated for that fight, and I think that could be a distinctive factor. It could work for him or it could work against him. He will train so hard for this fight, and because of their previous history, he will have a psychological confidence. He will go into that ring feeling that he knows that he can win. The 13th idea is the panelists split 3-1 on whether Joshua is even a great fighter versus simply a great commercial draw. So again, we got great fighter and then great commercial draw. And this leads to the question, does resume matter less than the moment? Let's establish some context. Anthony Joshua was a former 2-time heavyweight champion. In Britain, he is a legend and he is well respected worldwide. Let's repeat that again. Former 2-time heavyweight champion. His victory against Vladimir Klitschko was absolutely epic. At Wembley Stadium, I believe, in front of 90,000 people. He has an exceptional brand, but he was also an elite fighter in his era. Was his era a great era? That's something that we can debate. Was it as good as the 90s? Was it as good as the 70s? Maybe not. But let's not forget that in the rematch with Usyk, he gave Usyk all he could handle for 9 rounds. And then in the 10th round and the 11th round, Usyk went to Matrix mode, similar to how Bivol went into Matrix mode against Beterbiev in their rematch. I feel that we shouldn't minimize how good Anthony Joshua was. And it depends how you define a great fighter. You know, there's different levels to fighting from 1 to 10. But Anthony Joshua has given so much and he's definitely a great British heavyweight. And like I said, the achievement of a 2-time heavyweight champion, that speaks for itself. And it wouldn't surprise me, he still has the opportunity to be a 3-time heavyweight champion, assuming he continues after the Tyson Fury fight. So I'm not sure if I agree with that premise. I'm not sure. Like I said, I think in our neck of the woods, we consider Anthony Joshua to be a great fighter, but maybe we're biased. And then the 14th idea is the universal agreement. This may be Joshua's last meaningful fight, win or lose. Is Joshua fighting for a legacy-defining win or a dignified exit? I believe AJ will come to win. Definitely. There's purpose. When you look at his post-fights, there's a spiritual element to AJ. You know, you can see that this part of his career, it means so much to him. And if he beats Tyson Fury, this transforms his career even further. Tyson Fury and AJ have been on a trajectory, and some believe that Tyson Fury in the ring has the better resume. What does that mean? It means that there's so much on the table, figuratively speaking. This fight, from AJ and from Tyson Fury's perspective, is not just about money. It's about integrity. It's about purpose. Okay, so let's round this off with 7 questions. Question number 1, if Prenga could hurt Joshua, what happens when Tyson Fury lands clean? Again, the premise is if Tyson Fury lands clean, and we're not sure if Prenga punches harder than Tyson Fury or if Tyson Fury punches harder than Prenga. And will Anthony Joshua allow Tyson Fury to hit him the way he allowed Prenga to hit him? Will he make the necessary adjustments? Now, the problem is that Tyson Fury can fight really well in the pocket. And the problem is that Tyson Fury has a really great uppercut. If Tyson Fury lands the uppercut consistently, this will be a massive problem for Anthony Joshua. Question number 2, did Team Joshua underestimate Prenga, or was his aggression impossible to predict? Two things can be true at the same time. Clearly, they underestimated the power of Prenga and the audacity of Prenga. And of course, his aggression was impossible to predict because he's been aggressive to lower tier fighters, and I say that respectively. But he's never fought anyone that's either elite or been perceived as being elite. So that type of reaction was clearly unexpected. Question number 3, is Joshua's chin permanently damaged, or can better defense protect it? Has Joshua had a great chin? I'm not sure. I wouldn't say he's got a bad chin. I mean, he got hurt by Dillian Whyte against a counter left hook, but at that time, Dillian Whyte was hurting everyone with the counter left hooks. He put Joseph Parker on the floor twice with that counter left hook. Vladimir Klitschko knocked him down, but Vladimir Klitschko is a power puncher. So it's hard to say whether he had a bad chin or if his chin is now permanently damaged. What we do know is that he was caught by Prenga. Some say that the punch was only 40% of the power and he was on the floor. The important thing, though, is that he got back up. So if Joshua has a bad chin, then that's supplemented with great recuperation powers. And we need to speak about both to make it fair. And yes, a better defense will make it harder to get through to that chin. Question number 4, was Joshua's corner emotional because he needed urgency or simply disorganized? I think the emotional element was important at that time. Whether that team is disorganized in communication, that will probably transpire in later fights. Again, communication is an individual thing. The way one trainer communicates with a fighter may be different in another scenario. And it's not about, I guess it's about effective communication. And effective communication can look different for different people. So it's important that the communication is effective, even if it doesn't look like it's effective from the outside. Question 5, is Joshua's slow start a technical flaw rather than a psychological scar from Ruiz? I don't think the psychological scar from Ruiz caused the Prenga knockdown. I think Prenga was audacious. I think he went for it. Remember, in the first 10 seconds, Joshua threw a hard left hook, a hard short left hook. But Prenga he took the bull by the horns. He took his chance. He took his initiative. He scratched that lottery ticket. He went for it. And fair play to him. Apparently he's going to be signed by Eddie Hearn. So congrats to him. But I don't think the Ruiz situation has a psychological scar, because if it had a psychological scar, it would affect his recuperative powers and it would affect his psychology in managing a crisis. And Anthony Joshua is good at managing a crisis. Question 6, could Fury's aggression actually bring him into Joshua's most dangerous punching range? Definitely. I think before this fight, Tyson Fury would probably be looking to box AJ. Now he might have the confidence to fight him, and that could be a vital mistake. I think in the last 2 fights that I've seen, they're trying to duplicate the Tyson Fury that fought Vladimir Klitschko. Tricky, lots of feints, lots of movement, and that Tyson Fury is very difficult to beat. Not the greatest to watch, but very difficult to beat. If he turns into the Tyson Fury that fought Deontay Wilder in the 3rd fight, that means it's a better fight, but AJ's windows of opportunities grow exponentially. And the 7th and final question is Joshua fighting Tyson Fury for money, legacy, or a final sense of purpose? Anthony Joshua has made loads of money. Tyson Fury has made loads of money. Boxing, part of boxing has a relationship with capitalism. So of course, for the fight to happen, there has to be a lot of money on the table. But with regards to Tyson Fury and AJ, when you've made all the money, I get a sense that it becomes about other things than just money. Anthony Joshua has a financial infrastructure. When he fights, his people eat. Tyson Fury has a financial infrastructure. When he fights, his people eat. It's not just about feeding yourself, it's now about feeding your team. But it's also about building your legacy and creating a cultural impact. I think Tyson Fury and AJ are both locked in to create that massive cultural impact. And I think that they're both so dedicated to this fight that I don't think either of them will quit. I think they will fight to the end, because I think a victory for both of them will mean so much. So here is my final statement. Think of this. Anthony Joshua enters the Tyson Fury fight with vulnerabilities, questions, and enormous pressure. But also he enters with power, experience, and purpose. The Prenga performance exposed technical problems, not necessarily a finished fighter. Fury may be the favorite, but aggression could lead him directly into Joshua's danger zone. This is more than money. It is legacy, redemption, and one final opportunity to redefine his career. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community, and that means I'm interested in your thoughts, I'm interested in your perspectives, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, press like, hype, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.